If I stood out in the rain night, my only light a candle, a million miles away, would you lay down your fire as I raised mine? Would you not kill again? And oh, when you're near me, oh my love, oh my joy, there's nothing ever to weary me, oh my darling one. We light this candle maybe in what we think is our affiliation with the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the chalice flame, or what we might call the still small voice in the wilderness, crying out for peace and justice in the face of what seems like silence in the rest of the world. I'm going to put this candle far over here because I don't want it to be anywhere near all these wonderful documents that we have in front of us on this Sunday morning, round table full of things. Welcome everybody, and I hope you enjoy and appreciate these documents as much as I have had a pleasure of putting them together. I'm going to start with a song, and I'm going to weave in and out of these next 2 hours some music from what we used to do. And this one is, Community Church has a very strong Christian tradition, as does Unitarianism. That's sort of where it came from, but then diverged over many centuries. And this when I was a kid, a missionary kid, evangelical family, this was called Onward Christian Soldiers, but this is kind of like maybe back from the Crusades or something, but this is a different treatment of that same melody. And this comes from the memorial service of Donald Guy Lothrop from 1905 to 2002. This was in this very auditorium on September 29, 2002. It was conducted by several people, but Reverend David Olson was the officiator or facilitator or whatever the word is for whoever leads the service, with words of testimony from Ron Shapiro, Howard Zinn, Edward Teixeira, Margaret Douglas, Peggy McCarter, and Mark Solomon. And this is the song that they started with. Forward through the ages in unbroken line, move the faithful spirits at the call divine, gifts in differing measure, hearts of one accord, manifold the service, one the true reward. Forward through the ages in unbroken line, move the faithful spirits at the call divine. Another one that was sung in the same program is one that we love here. I'll just sing one verse of it. Die Gedanken sind frei, my thoughts freely flower. Die Gedanken sind frei, my thoughts give me power. No scholar can map them, no hunter can trap them, no one can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei. This old German folk song is said to date back for more than 400 years. It apparently sprang from the Peasant War of 1524 to 26, when the oppressed peasants revolted against increased exploitation by the nobles. Unfortunately, the peasants were routed by the princes and the Swabian League, and their defeat prolonged serfdom in Germany for nearly 3 centuries. However, this fine song continued to be sung whenever German-speaking people made new attempts to gain freedom. That's the one we start with. This is just so much fun. I've done a little video that will give you bring you right into the place where all these documents come from, which is the 5th floor, presently almost uninhabitable because the windows and other things are in such It needs a bunch of bathroom work. It used to be an apartment. It was a rental for a group called the Boston Youth Leadership Project, BYOP, Boston Youth Empowerment
Organizing.
Project. So, they were up there for about 10 years. They moved out, and our archives found their way up there. The archives had been in a closet and a loft in the fourth floor office. Then they were moved. We rented that space out because we needed the money. We moved them all to the mezzanine room, which is also the broom closet and the mechanical closet. They were down there in boxes and boxes and boxes. Then we moved. We got a little tiny room on the fourth floor next to the kitchen, and they lived in there. And we were able to put up shelves and sort of start looking at them. When BYOP moved out of the fifth floor, we got the whole floor to be able to spread things out and really look at what we have there. And that's where they are now, and that's where all this came from. And I just wanted to start with maybe a little film that I made this morning, a little video on my camera that you can have a look at where I've been this past week collecting these documents to share with you. Hello friends, it's Dean Stevens, Administrator, Community Church of Boston, and this is a sequel to a video that I shot in 2020, right when COVID was happening. The streets were empty, there was nothing going on, and I was doing a little tiny mini talk about our fifth floor archives. I'm looking out at Trinity Church and at the John Hancock building. You can't even see the top of it. But this is the introduction to our fifth floor, which presently houses our archives. We've gotten a chance to spread them out in a very unorderly fashion, but to have the room to be able to really look at them is quite a luxury. We have some of them in this room here as well, and a whole lot in the back room. But I just want to go over a little bit of what we've got. And I'm going to start in the back room because it has maybe the most treasured little collections. This is the back room. This fifth floor is in pretty rough shape. The windows are really in bad need of repair, both front and back. But here's what I want to show you, starting with these binders that are the yearbook binders that have the bulletins and the announcements and the newsletters of each year, starting in 1926, going all the way through the 30s and 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way until now. Crystal and I have been doing these binders that have all of the newsletters, all of the posters, and also have a lot of the board documents, the minutes of meetings, the reports of the administrator, etc. We have some more of those downstairs. But this is pretty much a complete compilation of these yearbooks. Here we have, in these archival boxes, correspondences of Donald Lothrop to potential speakers that each year or each season has one of these boxes. And here, take this one, where I put a list from 1954, I guess, of some of the correspondence. Thurgood Marshall, Ralph Bunch, Scott Nearing, Louis Mumford, George Kennan, Richard Niebuhr, Robert Oppenheimer, Paul Tillich, Thornton Wilder, Bromley Oxnam, Bishop, Rabbi Brickner, Rabbis Brickner and Oxnam. Anyway, that's a little taste of that. Down here we have some other binders, chronologized by the late Ron Elbert. This is like a clipping service that somebody in the church meticulously took of all of the previews and reviews and references to Community Church of Boston each year in several of the local papers. and that goes into the 50s and 60s, but really a lot in the 40s. Here we have minutes of the board, all in here. I want to show you something, just a real treasure that we've organized into these archival boxes. These are cassette tapes of maybe 40 years worth of talks at Community Church, many of them in Morse Auditorium, Boston University. A lot of just assorted boxes that we haven't had a chance to really go through and tell you what they are. After the cassettes, we had VHS tapes. This is all VHSs. We also have a couple of boxes full of DVDs and CDs, the recordings of the proceedings of the church. We have some boxes of archives donated by different members now deceased. This is John Mannheim. We have a lot of stuff from the late Cynthia Foster. These are pieces of furniture that might house our archives at some future date. Over there we have posters in these long metal filing cabinets, more boxes. This is all a lot of artwork of Cynthia Foster and a lot of political artwork. Here's some more. These are different topics that we have slowly kind of put into categories. Let me give you some of them. This one is my favorite. It's called "What is Community Church of Boston?" And it's just a lot of bloviating by ministers of what we are and who we are and what we represent, always scratching our head and trying to figure it out. This is a lot about fundraising. Here is a category I start that's just in memoriam, just memories and bulletins from funerals and obituaries of lost members now deceased. Here is a bunch of stuff that's downstairs right now. It's from our House on American Activities era in the 50s. GBIO is Greater Boston Interfaith Organization. Here's some things about the Rosenberg, some transcripts from their legal proceedings. And here is a pile of things from the 80s. It's a committee that's called the Long Range Planning Committee that met, and these are minutes of meetings and a final report that they made. Here's some things about ministerial searches. Here's some things about a couple of crises that we had in 2013 and 2014, a serious break in the church. This one is about a big crisis in 1989 and 90 over a bunch of matters, financial matters. Here's all the letters of Donald Lothrop. They're alphabetized and it's correspondence. A lot of his letters are the carbon copies. Here's another piece of furniture that will hopefully eventually house a lot of these documents that we have. We have bylaws. We have David Olson's documents. Over here is Bill Albert's documents, including the lawsuit that he was involved in while he was a minister of the church in the 80s. We have prison members behind bars. We have sanctuary, documents about our sanctuary program, gallery of social and political art. We have down here the Justice School, an experiment that we did in the children's program in 2006 and 2007. Right here we have Safety Net, a group that we co-sponsored, organizing a struggle against the biolab. Here is a box. There's 2 or 3 boxes of things that came from the estate of Donald Lothrop when his son John Lothrop passed away. Here's more of that. Social action, anniversary events, Willard Uphouse, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, W.E.B. Du Bois, Scott and Helen Nearing, and Cuba. Cuba right here. Down here is pretty much a complete set of the sermons of John Haynes Holmes. Lots of stuff here. I've gone on too long. And let's go back to the documents down in the auditorium. Okay, we're back. Just start with some programs. Memorial service for John Haynes Holmes. It was conducted, the address was Roger Baldwin, the founder of the ACLU. That was in 1964, May 3rd. Again, there were always hymns, and the words were on the back, and it tells you what tune. All of these hymns happen to have been written by John Haynes Holmes. If you don't know, John Haynes Holmes was the minister of Community Church of New York, and very instrumental in founding this church as well, which was an offshoot. And he would come up once a month and preach. And in the heyday, 2,000 people might come to hear him and others speak in Symphony Hall and in a lot of other places. There's all three of these are hymns that were the words to the hymns were written by John Haynes Holmes, and it's the same sort of theme, just kind of upgrading, if you will, the content to not be so blood of Jesus and all the darker things in some Christian hymns, and more of a kind of like a hopeful we're on to a new horizon, a new sunrise. Those sort of lyrics. I'll read just one verse of something here, and I'm picking it completely out of. O'er continent and ocean, from city, field, and wood, still speak, O Lord, thy messengers of peace and brotherhood. In Athens and Benares, in Rome and Galilee, the fronted kings and conquerors, and taught mankind of thee. It goes on and on. There's another little musical thing that I want to talk about. There was something that in the Christian tradition you would call the doxology, where praise God from whom all blessings flow, praise him all creatures here below, praise him above ye heavenly host, praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Well, our doxology was sung over and over, and it's just a four-line thing, I don't know what the original melody to it was. Maybe some of the longtime folks could tell us this. Like, this is a program from, it just so happens to be a program from 1958, April 20th. The speaker is Reverend Martin Luther King. Let me tell you how this goes. It's a rhyme scheme that goes da 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 da. Da 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 da. And so I'm wanting to know what melody was used, because it could have been, now with our hearts attuned to thine, thy spirit flows through ours, thy kingdom come, thy will be done through our creative powers. Or it could be the one that I remember singing in evangelical prep school, which goes, now with our spirit hearts attuned to thine, thy spirit flows through ours, thy kingdom come, thy will be done through our creative powers. The first one, of course, was Amazing Grace, and this one is O God, our help in ages past. But I think the best one would be The House of the Rising Sun. Now with our hearts attuned to thine, thy spirit flows through ours, thy kingdom come, thy will be done through our creative powers. What do you think? House of the Rising Sun? Or there's a bunch of other melodies that you could use if we ever decided to revive the the community church doxology. So
Can't go wrong with a band called the Animals.
that's right, the animals, the animals. Here's a cool thing, or is this the one? 1968, Dr. Harvey Cox. Other speakers that time were Dr. Scott Nearing, Father Blaise Bonpane, Maryknoll missionary in Guatemala. John Beecher grew up in Alabama, studied engineering, sociology, has taught at Dartmouth, Arizona, UU Santa Cruz. Those are a few programs. Here's one. Let's see Margaret Sanger, 1929, and it's called Shall the Citizens of Boston Be Allowed to Discuss Changing Their Laws? It's a panel. It's Mrs. Margaret Sanger, Director of the Birth Control Clinical Research Bureau, J.M. Landis, Professor, Harvard Law School, and Clarence Skinner, Professor of Social Ethics, Tufts College, and of course founder of Community Church of Boston. Margaret Sanger, who most known about her birth control initiatives, but also deep into eugenics and other stuff that's not so nice. Here's one I love. This is an article in the Boston Globe when Lothrop retired, and it talks about his sermon, his retirement sermon. But it has a photo. It has a photo of people in the packed house of Boston Conservatory Auditorium, and I don't know if you can see it, but I think this speaks a lot to the Boston Globe's opinion of us. It has like the first three pews. There's like elderly ladies who are fast asleep. So next we go to let's do the 50s. The whole thing about the HUAC. We have. I'm sure that in the letters of Lothrop, there's a whole lot more about this. But if you don't know, the Community Church of Boston was infiltrated by a fellow who later became more notorious. His name was Herbert Philbrick. Herbert Philbrick, who I don't know a lot, but somebody tells me there are programs. There was a TV series that was about him. He was an FBI agent, and he would go and infiltrate. And I found just day before yesterday, I'd never seen this before, a transcript of his testimony, 1951, Herbert Arthur Philbrick, before the United States House of Representatives Subcommittee of the Committee on Un-American Activities, and it's on very delicate kind of parchment paper, and they're swearing him in, and state your full name, when or where you're born. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts. Where do you reside? Melrose, Massachusetts. It goes on, and basically it gets into him saying that the community church is under the direction of the Communist Party, and filled with communists who we have to hate and blacklist and all those things. All through the 50s, this persisted, and some people I've heard say really that was a time of great trial for Community Church. I found some documents where Community Church of New York's minister sort of denounces Reverend Lothrop for not denouncing communism, and there was a serious break between the two churches, which at that time was called the Community Church Movement, which was sort of an attempt to bring more social content and social activism to what was before World War I just religion. And a lot of the founders of the church were and of the movement just opposed to how churches were flag waving during World War I and recruiting soldiers to be in the ranks of that tragic war. But it culminated in this document. I think that this would be, there's so much up there that would be a wonderful material for a PhD candidate or for somebody to do serious research and write a book about the history of this church. There's this many transcripts of Lothrop's sermons that run the gamut of all the different possible topics during all the years that he was minister here, and it goes all the way into the 60s when he's denouncing Vietnam, and in the 50s when he's trying to get the Rosenbergs from being executed. He talks about the petition that he spread around churches and ministers of all New England to try and get them to sign this petition to save the Rosenbergs. There was supposedly a huge demonstration right in Copley Square in front of the church the day before and on the day that they were executed in 1953, I believe it was. But this whole thing, I want to read you from this really historic document. It's Reverend Donald Lothrop before the Joint Legislative Committee on Rules of the General Court of Massachusetts. And this was in response to all of these members of the church, including one we remember well. His name was Abe Cohen, being paraded in front of this committee and told and interrogated, "Are you now, or have you ever been?" And somewhere here I have the transcript of Abe Cohen's testimony. I can't put my finger on it now, but this speech that Lothrop gave was kind of the last nail in the coffin of that committee. It was disbanded a couple weeks after this speech was delivered, and in response to that, what I talked about, Community Church of New York denouncing him for not denouncing communism, here's his response, and it's in the transcript from this address by Lothrop. "Let us take up the first aspect of this charge, and it is important to show that it is not necessary to have a commission and give it $100,000 to spend on this kind of thing, namely that I have given comfort and aid to communists," quote unquote. "Gentlemen, I plead guilty to this charge. I have given aid and comfort to all kinds of people, black and white, Jew and Gentile, Catholic and Protestant, Mohammedan and Buddhist, rich and poor, capitalist and communist, Democrat and anarchist. I have never selected those who use my ministry, nor have I ever refused. I can name names and cite cases where I have officiated at weddings, at funerals, or counseled and heard the confession of those in each one of these categories. My exemplar is one Jesus of Nazareth, who feared not to associate with and minister to prostitutes, thieves, and tax gatherers. He believed in virtue by association, not guilt by association. I might say my business is to bring not the saved, but sinners to repentance. In other words, I plead guilty to giving comfort and aid to persons. I don't find out first whether they are in the social register. Hold out on them until they qualify, and then, sure that my hands will not be soiled, render to them the service which they need." That's remarkable. And that's Community Church, say I, in my still small voice, humble opinion. And there's so many examples in front of me. I want to say that we have on the Zoom several long-standing members of Community Church, and I want them to please interrupt anytime they want, and whatever stories, let's call this the beginnings of an oral history where we compile and gather stories. I want all of those folks to also sometime come in to church and be filmed with your best stories, and maybe your worst stories too, of community church and what it means to you and what it's meant to you over the years. I'd love to hear stories of when we spoke out on behalf of Cuba, and some anti-revolution Cubans came in and threw stink bombs at New England Life Hall. I'd love to hear stories about, well, maybe it's too late, about the late 50s when we were kicked out of which other auditorium it is here because of our supposed association with communism. Those kind of stories. Another one that really fascinates me and is the name of a speaker in the 50s. Her name was Dorothy Thompson. If you don't know who she is, you might have heard of Edward R. Murrow, who was the voice of the news during World War II. She was sort of the female version of the same. She was a very well-respected journalist between the wars, and was the first American journalist to interview Adolf Hitler. When her article about Hitler came out, she was immediately ejected from Germany and not allowed to ever come back. Dorothy Thompson was the wife of the novelist Sinclair Lewis, and she wrote extensively. We have several books. I've looked on Amazon for books about her, and we have 4 or 5 of them back behind me. One beautiful one written by Peter Kurth, Kurth, and she was also very much associated with Zionism in the time of the 40s and 30s as well. She went to Palestine starting in 1950, and she brought back reports, and there are some that you can find on YouTube, about the plight of the refugees in Gaza. And that's what brings us to this present moment. And she wrote very honestly about just horrid conditions and about what had happened to Palestinian people driven out of their villages and pushed into Gaza and pushed into all the neighboring countries, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, but especially Gaza. And she was blacklisted just like we were. She immediately lost her position as like the Europe correspondent and bureau chief for the New York Post. She lost a column that she had in the Ladies' Home Journal. Pretty much a complete and absolute blacklist for speaking out on behalf of the Palestinian people. She spoke here in 1952. When that happened, she became a lecturer and did a very serious lecture tour. And there's correspondence between her and Lothrop. This one is after she spoke. And I guess there was a lot of controversy about it. Before World War II, Community Church had a very strong Zionist bent. In 1948, Lothrop gave a talk that was called Christianity and the Hope of Zionism. There was also another rabbi named Stephen Wise who carried on a long-standing correspondence with our founder, Clarence Skinner. And there's a book that's the letters between Rabbi Stephen Wise and Clarence Skinner, and we have it here in our collection. So this is just a paragraph of Dorothy Thompson writing to Donald Lothrop. Dear Dr. Lothrop, I don't think he was a doctor, he was a reverend, but I wrote you when I was still in a highly nervous condition from which I have since quieted down, realizing that I was not quite myself. However, I know I was right about the wave of hate which from one part of the audience was palpable. I have greatly suffered from it in my career and reputation. There is no group in this country more ruthless than the Zionists against anyone who disputes a single one of their theses. But hitherto I had experienced it at some distance. This time I felt it in every nerve and pore, and since I am anything but an hysterical woman, I know it was not self-induced. I am sorry I didn't cover more of the Middle East. The reason was a technical one, time. Every single situation out there. The Persian, for example, the Sudan question, oil, would take 45 minutes even superficially to describe. The Arabs constitute the largest agglomeration of people in the area. Earlier in September, I had tried in a speech to, quote, paint with a larger brush, unquote, and found the room of even an hour's address much too small. That is my own incapacity, I know. Perhaps I am just too full of the experiences of my recent trip. I'm sure the community church can use the expense money most usefully. Sincerely, Dorothy Thompson. Here's something else that I found. This is from 1910. I first found it in the notes from Cynthia Foster. Was our remarkable connection to the early days of community church. She was a very, very dedicated member, and wrote extensively, gave talks, received our Sacco and Vanzetti Award, was a tax resistor. Pretty much her whole life, refused to pay war taxes. Here's some of her notes, just notes about the church. Just here's a list of all of the places we met: Steinert Hall, Copley Theater, Symphony Hall, Jordan Hall. And she notes the dates. Jordan Hall, 42 to 49. John Hancock Hall, 49 to 53. Boston Conservatory, 53 to 68. New England Life Hall, 68 to 74. And then back to Boston Conservatory. And then Morse Auditorium, 74 to 87. And then eventually, Community Church here. There were times when we also, very short time during the ministry of Phil Zwerdling, and I want to recognize Mark Schechtman, who is with us, and I have never really had a full conversation with Mark, and I hope that we can get some oral history from Mark, who was actually the clerk of Community Church of Boston, late 70s, and there's a wealth of information and stories there, I'm sure, Mark. So that's the reason I thought of that was because when Phil Zwerdling was here for a short while, we met with Theodore Parker Unitarian Universalist Church. There was some kind of an association which they were hoping would thrive, but eventually, after Morse Auditorium, the church settled on here and remodeled this floor to be an auditorium and a gathering place in a multi-function hall. And now a bookstore and a craft store and a lot of other things, an art gallery. So many things that we can and we do here as best we can. And here's more notes from her. And I found amongst her items this very torn, scotch taped together document, this Boston Community Church at 10 years. Report at the 10th anniversary banquet held at the 20th Century Club in Boston, January 4th, 1930. And this is very delicate, but we went into, this is the cool thing, is that if we have received a lot of donations from church members of their archives, and a lot of them are repeated. We have them in that whole collection of binders that record. So I was able to go to 1930 and find the original document of of this torn document that is where is it? We took it out and we scanned it and we made copies of it, and then we put the original, which is in perfect shape, back in the 1930 binder, trying to, as best we can, and I'm not an archivist, I'm not a historian, to practice archival integrity, and it's back in there now. But we have it in front of us, and it tells a bunch of stuff. I can't read the whole thing. It's 4 pages long, but let's just pick out an excerpt, and read it. No church is complete without a young people's group, and in 1923, the first young people's organization was formed. It was called Today's Club, and it held regular suppers with informal discussion. Since moving to Symphony Hall, this group has grown, has taken the name Community Youth, and is now an official branch of the church. Meetings are held on alternating Sunday afternoons at 6 Byron Street, which was the offices of the church, with an attendance that sometimes reaches 200. In order to translate into concrete action the social idealism to which the community church is dedicated, Social Justice Committee of the church was formed in 1926 with Mrs. Glendower Evans as its chairman. This committee has given its support to social legislation, to the movement to abolish the death penalty, and to aid in several industrial crises. Its chief work, however, was in regard to the Sacco and Vanzetti case. On and on. And just a whole lot of really vital information there.
Can I have the mic?
Yes, please. This is Angie. Let me turn the mic on and see if, can this be heard?
Okay, so this is Angie, and I just wanted to mention that one thing that I am bringing up is this. One of the goals of this place is to have more neurodivergent voices. I am autistic, and I am a survivor of ABA, which is a terrible type of so-called therapy that uses the same tactics as conversion therapy for gay people. It's basically coercing and forcing you through reward, punishment, and withdrawal of rewards to look, think, and sound like you're not disabled. And I had a great deal of childhood trauma from that. So the more I'll be looking forward to this church having a lot more voices from autistic people and people with other voices. I'll just say that we don't, some of us, like me, think that certain traits of autism should be cured. Autism itself should not be cured because it is not a mental illness or disease. It's not caused by pollution, vaccines, or GMOs. It is caused just by a difference in how our brain works. It's just like there are many different skin colors, there are many different types of brains.
Thank you, Angie. That's a great idea. I would really like to take that as an initiative for me to invite my friend Rabbi Shoshana Meira Friedman to speak here on the issue of autism. Shoshana has a 4 or 5 year old son who's autistic, and in her raising her son, she is coming to the startling and very eloquent realization that she also is autistic and has been that way her whole life, and has a lot of really interesting things to say about it. Thank you, Angie Wildman. I want to proceed with an interesting letter here. This is the original. I'll tell you who it's from first. Senator John F. Kennedy, 1954. Dear Reverend Lothrop, thank you very much for your recent letter inviting me to speak at one of your services on some Sunday morning this coming year. I am very grateful to you for your very kind and thoughtful invitation. Unfortunately, however, the rules of the Catholic Church, of which I am a member, do not permit its members to take part in the services of other faiths. Is it possible that you might have a meeting with your church people which is not directly connected with the service at which I might speak? If so, I would be very glad to do so. With every good wish, sincerely yours, John F. Kennedy. Which is a good reason for me to announce and remind you that tomorrow night we have an organization that is working with us a whole lot. It's got several names. I call it the John F. Kennedy Speech Memorial Committee. And Amar Ahmad, who is our Zoom tech staff person at the church, is very active with it, as is Marty Schatz. And we are featuring one event per month, usually on the 10th of the month, but not this month. It's tomorrow night. It's the 19th. And the speaker is Dr. Helen Caldicott. If you've been around, you know about her as a leader in the anti-nuclear weapons movement, International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War. She's now retired, lives in Australia, which is where she is from. This program will be introduced by Martin Sheen. That's tomorrow night. Join us, will you? Monday night at 7 p.m. And we are going to put in the chat the as well as the YouTube comments, the link for you to register for this remarkable talk. We have also in a future event with the John F. Kennedy Group, Dennis Kucinich will be speaking as well. And it's a good moment to tell you about some other great things coming down soon. The ones that I remember really vividly: Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, March 15th, on Gaza, Ukraine, China, and Taiwan, and Iran and the Gulf states. Larry Wilkerson was Secretary of State Colin Powell's chief advisor on foreign affairs, and he had Colonel Wilkerson had a 35-year career in the military. He will be with us in person, and we will soon have a page out for you to make reservations. I'm sure we will be a packed house here. It also will be live streamed. Other events, I can't help but tell you about concerts coming up. Remarkable line of concerts. March 10th, Adam Ezra Band will be with us. Adam Ezra is the hardest working young band leader in New England. I've known him since he was a teenager. His mom, Joanne Hamill, is a good friend of mine. And he will be with us live in person. We're calling it a house concert. And he will have a special guest whose name is Dean Stevens, and that would be yours truly. Later in the month, we have David Rovics, probably the foremost remarkably amazing political commentator, songwriter of our time. David travels the world constantly, especially Europe and the United States, and he will be with us live in person on March 29th. April 1st, we have a benefit for Community Church. Jimmy Tingle will join us, and that will not be live streamed, only in person. So again, get your tickets, and he's so generous. He's giving us 100% of proceeds from that event to Community Church in our time of really serious need because of our downstairs tenant situation. We also have April 6th, a Joni Mitchell night, which will be performed by students and alumni of Berklee College of Music and some other friends of Community Church. We have later in May 19th, Maura Smiley, a remarkable vocalist and singer with a group of whose name escapes me. They're an organization who puts music into institutions, prisons, hospitals, and homeless shelters. Mostly classical music. This will be a music with classical singers backing Maura Smiley. And that's May 19th. May 24th is Dean Stevens' 70th birthday concert. I hope you will join us for that as well. I'll have several friends of mine as well, Rob Flax and Max Ridley on bass. On we go. I'm sure I forgot some great stuff that's coming up, but let's go on to the year was 1940. Tilly Ruth. Hey, Tilly, will you join us and tell us a little bit? So glad to welcome you. Tilly.
Hi. Okay, one thing you left out in terms of community church outreach, which I wanted to say, this is very personal to me, was that it was a place to get married. If you were interreligious or certainly the whole question of race, there was a lovely, well, Lothrop was the one who married me and my husband, but it was a very, it was a beautiful ceremony, and he would try to personalize it in that he would say something, and this is especially for you, and then he read a poem from Cabral, and then what he didn't know is that well, at least a half a dozen of my friends had been married within a month at community church, and he had said the exact same thing. But it was how do you say, you could do this very easily. And I also, the note with Lothrop is that my husband went into, who was raised Catholic, and he went in to see Rosa to arrange time, etc. And he thought Lothrop was the janitor, as he was there in overalls, who had just come in from, I guess, from his farm or whatever. But I just wanted to say it was outreach, and it was known not just my brother got married a week before I did. And that was purely mercenary because he was going into the army, and he wanted that allotment check for his wife to be. And at that point in time, she was at Smith College on a scholarship, and it was for unmarried women only. So they cheated the government and had a couple of years little stake, like I said. But it was known that this was where you could go and have a nice, friendly, a marriage, an informal setting. And or if you wanted to make it formal, that was your problem. You could figure that one out. And then the other piece I wanted to say, you said something, Dean, about problem with Catholic Church or with ministers and so forth. I wanted to tell you that wasn't completely true. When my brother-in-law died, who had been raised Catholic, and half the family was very much Catholic, but the memorial service was held at community church. And yes, we had a Catholic priest came and spoke at the funeral service. So I just wanted to say community church was open. And that was my big piece, open. Thank you.
Open. That's the byword, isn't it, Tilly? Any race, any creed, any lack thereof is welcome here, say we. Thank you, Tilly. That's pretty amazing, and I can't help but comment that there were a couple of bishops that spoke. You know, they knew that this was a huge platform to speak to 1,000 people in Symphony Hall, and I forget their names, but they spoke at community church. Numerous rabbis. There was one named Brickner, Balfour Brickner, and his son Barnett Brickner. Both of them rabbis, spoke numerous times around Lent or around Passover. There was usually a rabbi who spoke, and a lot of Eastern religion was espoused. Krishnamurti spoke here. Other exponents of Eastern religion with Indian names spoke as well. There was also, you know, this was a really important adult education place. We had, I wish maybe it's in here. And I want to brag about this a little bit. The original of this document is up in the archives. It's very delicate, but it's a compilation. It was the one upstairs, a compilation of everything that ever happened at Community Church, the speakers, from 1921 to 1960. I have been able to add to that, to bring it till now, with the exception of a few years where we didn't keep very good records in the early 2000s. The first speaker, or first thing that's listed at the 20th Century Club is a Sacco and Vanzetti supper in late September 1921. But this speaks to a lot of things. I've used it. You see some yellow markers here. This is all the times that Scott Nearing spoke. And we did a program about Nearing, and this was, I wanted to go through it and read all the titles of his talks. These pink ones here are when Mark Solomon spoke, which is almost as many as Nearing. Mark Solomon, who was last with us just last year, and is getting on in his years. There's some other ones that I'd love to be in touch with and see if we can still get them to come and talk to us. One is Harvey Cox, and I want to show you, I can't remember now why I was going into, oh no, here's what I wanted to show you. In the back, after the compilation of all our talks, there's advertisements for different things. This is really interesting. This is it's called Victory Celebration. It's at the end of World War II, and it's a dinner and a celebration. It cost us $3.75 each for the Victory dinner, sponsored by the community church. But what I was talking about was adult education. Here's one season. The great books, Sartre, Dewey, Fromm, Parrington, Monsignor Sheen. Here's one that's psychiatrist, psychologist, and psychoanalysis, and it's a series that runs from October to December in 1949. What can be done for the unhappily married? What is psychosomatic medicine? How is our mental health? What is alcoholism? Here's Scott Nearing was huge. He would come and give 4 days of lectures, and he'd give 2 lectures in one evening. And he would talk about mostly world affairs, China, the twilight of empire, must we starve, war, fascism, united world, democracy is not enough, the Soviet Union as a world power, war and peace, the tragedy of empire. This is from 1953. Here's the great books and great issues: Machiavelli, John Donne, Henry Adams, William James. Each night would be Kierkegaard talk about something. Here's religions and denominations, and each week would be a different a person representing a different religion. Why I am a Jew, why I am a Protestant, why I am a Catholic, why I'm a Unitarian, Lutheran, theist, humanist, Hindu, Mormon, Muslim, Jehovah's Witness, spiritualist, Baha'i. And then the last one is a moving picture, showing a moving picture in 1956, and it's called Man's Need for Religion. Could go on and on about that, but I want to go to 1940. 1940, I don't know if you've heard Rachel Maddow's podcast about that time when there was enormous rise of Nazism between the wars in the United States. You might have seen that rally that happened at Madison Square Garden, filled with Nazis preaching anti-Semitism, preaching just horrible things. An interesting thing I found out was that there were two people disrupted that meeting in the loudest voice they could. One was Dorothy Thompson, who I just talked about. She was saying, these are lies, and she was ushered out of Madison Square Garden. There's footage of that in a recent PBS program. The other who disrupted that meeting, and basically it ended in chaos when a Jewish plumber, I forget his name, stormed the stage and was about to take the microphone from the speaker and address the audience, but he was attacked by a whole bunch of these Nazis, and then the police came in to try and take these Nazis off of him and usher him out, and the entire meeting ended in chaos. Donald Lothrop was very active in taking on this thing. In Boston, it was called the Christian Front. And there's a book that we recently got a hold of. It's written by Father Charles Gallagher, professor at Boston College, history professor. I heard about this on this Rachel Maddow podcast about Nazism between the wars. And immediately, I just found his email address and emailed him, and he immediately got back and said, "Oh, it's so good to hear from you. I didn't even know that Community Church of Boston existed. I had in my research on this book, the book is called The Nazis of Copley Square, I had seen reference to Community Church and to Reverend Donald Lothrop, but I didn't know that it was even still existent. And I'd be glad to come and speak." So he's going to be here in April. And I sent him a scan of this newsletter, which is from 1940, and it's where Reverend Lothrop is taking on this fellow named Francis P. Moran, who is the local leader of the Christian Front. And he says the following: the Community Church leader made the following statement: "I should like to say a word. You, Francis Moran, spoke at my church last week. Tonight, I should like to speak at your church meeting. When you were a guest at my church, you expressed your point of view to a group of disbelievers. Now I ask that you give me the same privilege and allow me to present to your believers some facts, irrefutable facts that they may not know. That is the essence of democracy. If you are Americans who believe in democracy, you will listen. First, I want to say that as a Christian minister, I resent the use of the name Christian Front by so unchristian a group. Your teachings are completely at variance with the teachings of the man whose name you use in vain. Specifically, I disagree with you when you say that the Boston Christian Front is not a part and parcel of the New York Christian Front, 17 of whose leaders are now in jail because of revolutionary activities against the government of the United States. I disagree with you when you say that the Christian Front is not associated with Father Coughlin and the doctrines which he spreads. I disagree with you when you say you are not anti-Semitic. You have said the Jews are eligible to membership in your organization. Nevertheless, in your own printed prospectus, there appears under the heading membership the following, quote, Americans who agree with the purpose of the organization as defined below, who are willing to dedicate themselves to the preservation and furtherance of these purposes and principles are eligible to membership, provided that they be male, Christian, and citizens either by birth or naturalization. He goes on, and it's just remarkable. And Charlie Gallagher at Boston College was really thrilled to receive this. He said, "I'm sorry I didn't know about all these materials. I would have come down to Community Church to look into your archives." And you know, that's sort of part of our purpose here. We have not had the bandwidth to really do justice to these archives, to preserve them, digitize them, make them available to scholars, make them available to ourselves to find out about. It's really just, I hope I have communicated to you a little bit of my amazement with what is here. It's the archive of probably no other church that has such a treasure, and there's a lot of questions, such as, should this archive stay here at Community Church? Is there some better place for it where it could be better taken care of, better preserved, better made available? Should it go to one of the universities, or should it stay here? I have this experience myself of having access to it and being amazed every time I go there. I can't help but find new amazing things about this church. I think, what time is it, Amar? 12:09. Oh, we still have a little time. I could go on forever, but I'll show you. When Harvey Cox spoke here in what year? 1970. There was a member of the church named Guna Oster, who was a brilliant artist, and she would draw the speaker every week. Upstairs, I can't find it right now. We have a whole record, of her drawings of the speaker. This is the young Harvey Cox in 1970. It came to me in some of Cynthia Foster's papers, and Cynthia Foster would take the program and write notes all over the program. And that was how she would take notes. You can hardly read them, but yeah, I can't make much meaning out of it. But she talks about Theodore Parker, and she talks about our connection to Theodore Parker. She talks about the 28 Black Panthers killed by police in this year, 1969. She talks about 22 awaiting trial in the New York Tombs. I think that's what they used to call the prison in New York. Cynthia Foster of blessed memory, and Harvey Cox. A Wednesday supper forum. The speaker will be Matthew Dumont. Dr. Matthew Dumont spoke here many times, and the title of his talk, this Wednesday forum, Donald Lothrop would make meatloaf every Wednesday. Come and enjoy meatloaf and hear about Matt Dumont talk about our drug problem, methods and programs for drug rehabilitation. Psychiatrist and Doctor of Philosophy, MD, University of Chicago, interned at Boston City Hospital, which is now called Boston Medical Center, psychiatric training, on and on. Incredible advocate of the poor in the city of Boston. I want to show you another drawing. If you can see it, if not, come in person. Every Wednesday noon we have an open house here, and I can show you. This is Ruth Hamilton. She was our resident singer, especially of gospel music, African American woman. She won our Sacco Vanzetti Award in 2004, I believe it is. This is a drawing of her on the back of a program. The Community Church of Boston presents Ruth Hamilton in a concert of songs. And it has Handel, Purcell, Tchaikovsky, Brahms, Schubert, Menotti, Sibelius, South Pacific, You Have to Be Carefully Taught. You remember that song? I Do from the play I Do, What is a Woman? Plant a Radish from the Fantastics. What Color is God's Skin? Wilkes and Silverman. Hear the Lambs a Cryin', arranged by Hayes. And Oh Them Angels, arranged by Boardman. I wish I could have been there. It was May 1969. Mary Daly, Dr. Mary Daly, key feminist professor at Boston College, eventually ejected from Boston College. Again, Cynthia Foster's program is completely written up in pencil. The Case for Freedom of Bobby Seale and Erica Huggins. Supper Forum, another Supper Forum. Massachusetts abortion laws, should they be repealed and why? Mrs. Susan Sabbath and Elliot Revo. It goes on and on. Here's a again.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
This is really a question to some of the older members of the church. Well, there's two things. The first thing is I put in the chat already that Ross Gelbspan died recently. I'm pretty sure he spoke at the church. I was probably there myself. But
I think he did, but I'm not positive, and I'd have to review the. If he didn't, he should have.
Yeah, he wrote extensively about Central America, and then after he retired from the Globe, quote unquote, he wrote a series of things about the environment, including I put a link to his death notice in the Globe, and also a link to a story he wrote about Exchange, an organization I was involved in, and on their website. So
Wow.
I just like to remember Ross. I met him a couple of times, and I can't really say I knew him, but he was a hell of a person. My experience.
Ross Gelbspan, presente. Yeah. So
And
this
then,
is.
actually, then I have another question. I actually emailed you this in advance, but I don't know if you saw it.
I did not.
I was wondering if I know he never spoke at Community Church, but I wonder if there was ever any attempt to get Malcolm X to speak at the church, whether there's letters trying to reach him, or I know he was a very, very controversial person, especially more then than now. But I was curious what the churches, if they made a serious attempt to get him to speak.
I have not seen his name in any of the Lothrop correspondence trying to find speakers or mention of his name with regard to anything. Angela Davis spoke here in the 80s, and lots of other African Americans prominent, like A. Philip Randolph, spoke, and of course MLK. And Thurgood Marshall, and it's quite a list. I found this. This is a promotion piece that we could actually bring up to date to add a few more names. And I'd like to read just a paragraph from the descriptive words written by Donald Lothrop. It says, "In some instances, our church has been attacked for having had the courage and the foresight to have invited to this pulpit some of those preachers and speakers, for we have given some a chance to be heard when they were debarred elsewhere. Some have been praised and honored at one time, and at a later time unmercifully unmercifully criticized and even ostracized, and later still to be received back into the company of proper persons, quote unquote. The community church never bowed to these winds of whim, but went ahead and asked the community to adjust to freedom rather than to lower its standards to a, quote, public relations, quote unquote, level. A price has had to be paid and the institution made to suffer. However, to have done otherwise would have been to destroy our birthright and the sacred legacy of the founders. And this is just a long, long list of speakers, and I'll just tell you the categories: statesmen, political leaders, clergymen, theologians, and philosophers, lots of those, China and Asia specialists, labor leaders, Philip Randolph in there, of course, educators and college presidents, economists, sociologists, historians, and political scientists, editors, commentators, and journalists, and finally, lawyers and jurists. Freedom fighters and crusaders. General Smedley Butler is listed there. Roger Baldwin, David Dellinger, Barbara Deming, James Farmer. Scientists and belles lettres. Langston Hughes, James Weldon Johnston, Kirtley Mather, Everett Mendelssohn. Lots of names. I wish I knew about all of these names, but I don't. And there's a lot of names that I could add to this. Howard Zinn, Noam Chomsky. It's pretty remarkable. And here's a picture. Actually, I want to go away from this. Well, I'll show you this picture. It has, let's see, Roger Baldwin, Joseph Barth, Dr. Scott Nearing, and Donald Lothrop. Joseph Barth is the Ministry Department Director of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Picture of some old guys there. Yeah, so I wanted to show you this photograph. This is not the original. Crystal has put this together and printed it out. This is a banquet. I'm going to get it close to the camera as best I can to show you. At the 20th Century Club. No, Lenox Hotel. And it's a gala banquet celebrating the 30th year of Donald Lothrop's ministry, 1966. And it's all really very well-dressed people. And you know what? They're all old. Just like us.
Not me. Well,
Yeah, just like a lot of us, but not a few that bring up the average age.
right now I'm 40.
All right, we have one or two even younger ones than you, which is a beautiful thing. I love this photo. I think we should frame it, and the original is in very delicate state. There's also a photo of Community Church of Boston's building very soon after we purchased it. It looks like it might be, we purchased in 1946, and it might be soon after because the cars on the street are very old-looking cars, but it does say Community Church of Boston in the window, and there's a Community Church of Boston banner flag flying, and it's basically the same configuration, same center pivot windows that are in pretty rough shape that we're trying to find funds, including grants to restore and weatherize. And right next to it is that little short building that is now Chick-fil-A.
Should I bring that to the camera?
Yes, I'll bring both of these. Just put them straight in front of me, right in front of the camera. And while Mark is doing that, I'll start reading Mark Schechtman. Just so good to have you here. If folks know about any other like real kind of legacy members and board members, please tell them to come see us, because we'd love to reconnect and get a complete oral history and storytelling about their experience at Community Church. Yeah. This is from John Haynes Holmes, the 20th anniversary of Community Church, 1940. Again, same as the Christian Front stuff that I told you about. And I want to find a paragraph just to read. Maybe I'll read you the end. That's where they say their most profound stuff, right? So you end your 20 years and begin straightway another 20 years and more. I salute you and congratulate you, not as one who is a stranger without, but as one rather who is an associate within, and who has shared therefore the labors, sacrifices, and joys of these 2 decades. For your work has been also my work. I cling to it. I boast of it. I pray for it. It is light in the hour of darkness and hope in the moment of despair. Whatever the catastrophes of our time, we need not be afraid, for in this church, as lofty as the love of God, as ample as the wants of man, we hold the future as a lamp that sheds its beams into the night. We have only to trim this lamp and guard it well and lift it high for ourselves and for humankind to find the way. Like in Browning's Paracelsus poem, we have done well, though not all well. If we stoop into a dark, tremendous sea of cloud, it is but for a time. We press God's lamp close to our breast. Its splendor, soon or late, will pierce the gloom. We shall emerge one day. John Haynes Holmes, minister of Community Church, one of the founders of the church. And again, there's a collection of all of his sermons up there, and a pile that's not collected of Lothrop's sermons as well. Here's the obituary to William Kunstler, who was the first winner of our Sacco and Vanzetti Award in 1977. It just goes on and on, as you can see. And I'm sure I've missed some things, but I want to conclude, and I want to reach out to any of the longtime members who might be out there. Judith and David Woodruff, Ron Shapiro, David Rothhauser. I invited them all to come join us. This has been too much of a dean celebration, and maybe if we don't have anything much else, I'm going to end with another hymn. Let's see, which one? This should be a good one.
Hello?
Yes, Charlie. Is that somebody with a question or a story?
No, it's actually some random noise in the background. I'm sorry.
Ed? Go ahead. Yes, Ed.
I just want to say that you did a great Boston Duck tour of the, I guess, the Community Church of Boston and what it stood for all these years. I've looked through a lot of archives you have, and it's kind of amazing to me that the same problems that we saw in 1920, 1930, 1940 are still with us. And I think some of those things should be part of the website at the Community Church. Maybe having a page or two showing each decade, talking about some of the major quotes of people who spoke there. And we just like to since the church is kind of standing for injustice, stopping injustice and things like that, and it seems as though many of our leaders are just having too much testosterone, especially the women that represent us, and have more cooperation in the world. And I think that's what a lot of the church is standing for. That's all I have to say.
That's Ed Beer, who, by the way, has done a tremendous amount of work on our archives, and I'm sure will, as we move forward in our process of organizing, preserving, celebrating, digitizing what we have up on that 5th floor. Ed has put together a couple of documents that make it easier to search and find and assess what it is that we have in those archives, and we thank you for that, Ed. If we ever have the bandwidth, there's rich possibility of grants to help us do this, of help by professional archivists and universities to help us embark on this task. Mostly, I've just started learning about grant writing. We succeeded in 2 really wonderful grants, but they're all about our building. With one of them, we replaced our heating and air conditioning with heat pumps and very highly efficient zones for electric air conditioning instead of oil steam heat. With another one, we got a new roof, and we are happy to celebrate that we have a brand new roof over us around the skylight that is above the auditorium. And that was a very expensive project, and we got half of the funds from the City of Boston CPA, Community Preservation Act funds. We applied for another grant for 2024 for our facade. We did not get that grant, sad to say, but we are on a path of looking for help in these huge projects, and there are several of them we have in mind. And I mention this just because this is all our principal focus, what we really want to do, and we have hopefully the help of a certain Jerry Kaplan, who has become just a beloved regular member of our staff. He's retired from Harvard University Press, and he has done remarkable work curating the Sacco and Vanzetti primary source collection that came from the late Bob Datilio. It inhabits our 3rd floor right now, and Jerry is also very interested in our own archives. I'll mention also the History Project, which is on our 4th floor, our newest tenant. Their challenge is to celebrate, preserve, archive, digitize the history of Boston's LGBTQ community, which is a magnificent thing, and we're just really happy to have them on board, and we hope some of the juju of archiving rubs off on us. We're just 1 floor up from them. So that's a terrific thing, and I urge you to stay tuned for some of the events that they host as well. A lot more to say, but what I was going to say is there's places to get grants like this. Another person to mention is Michelle Fazio, who is a professor in North Carolina of women's studies and American studies, is especially interested in Sacco and Vanzetti and the anarchist experience in the early 20th century. And she is really keen on helping us get grants from the likes of the Mass Historical Society, the National Endowment for the Humanities, to help us with this task, this challenge. So I was looking for one last song to finish with. That's one of the hymns, and I'm not finding the one I was looking for. Let me just look for another minute, and I will find it. Here's 19.
Dean?
Is that Judith?
Yes.
Hi, Judith.
Hi. I've been a member of this church since 1976. It's about 47 years. Anyway, I was going to say that one of the things that was very important was having a child care program so that young people with children of various ages could participate. There was programs for young people. I think you took my voice.
Yeah, you don't hear it. They
Yeah.
hear it.
I can't hear myself.
You want to hear yourself?
We hear you.
Okay, I was going to say there was programs for young people. They were all the way from the ages of 3, so that parents with young children could come. There were programs for preschool, school-age children, and even teenagers. And I think if the church wants to grow, we need to have people with children, and we need to be able to start indicating that we have that kind of program, invest money and materials into it, and explore space, and then advocate and go to places where we talk to progressive young families and recruit them, because the church is not going to continue unless we do.
You're absolutely right. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Judith, for reminding us of that. As many of you know, we had one attempt to do exactly that. It was called the Justice School. It was in 2006 and 7. We hired what we called a justice education person who came from the Unitarian Universalist tradition of religious education, but we gave it a different name. We called it Justice School. Kids, we had maybe between 6 and 8 kids who would come to the church just for the first 10 minutes and then be ushered upstairs to the 3rd floor where they engaged in all kinds of justice-related activities. They might include a walk over to Back Bay Station to see the statue of A. Philip Randolph and find out more about who he was and his leadership in the Union of Pullman Car Porters, or a walk over to the beautiful statue of Harriet Tubman that's over on Columbus Avenue. That sort of thing. Unfortunately, that experiment ended very quickly when the person we hired very suddenly resigned, gave us 2 weeks notice, and was gone, and we haven't really been able to revive it since, because of just our challenges, our many other challenges with staying afloat, with keeping the lights on, keeping the staff paid, and keeping the building from falling down. But that's definitely a really worthy challenge, Judith, and I hope that someday soon we can include that among what we do and what we do well. So I'm going to end here with the doxology again, and this time it's with yet another melody that you could use for what we call the doxology. And this is from 1968. The speaker for this program was again Dr. Harvey Cox, and here's how it goes. Now with our hearts attuned to thine, thy spirit flows through ours, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, through our creative powers. And then I'll do House of the Rising Sun. Now with our 2 hearts attuned to thine, thy spirit flows through ours, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, through our creative powers.
Hey, Dean, one piece. Community Church is geographically beautifully located, and one of the attractions for families was, hey, when there's a Christmas parade or anything like that, the church was open and one could go inside and watch with warm, but use the windows to look outside and what was going on. But it was
New
an
Year's.
attractive place for kids. Let me just put it that way, for families.
New Year's Eve parade.
Yeah.
This is definitely a wonderful place to have it, and we have over the years served hot cocoa and hot tea out on the street in the bitter cold of New Year's Eve. I have been trying to get a New Year's Eve concert here. My main target is my friend Jim Infantino, who sang last week. Magnificent songwriter who has a group that's called Jim's Big Ego, and I've bugged them three years in a row to get them to do a concert here, New Year's Eve. Haven't succeeded yet. Other ideas we might have, but always open house. We haven't had open house always. There have been times that I've been absent, haven't been able to be part of it. We could have an open house here regularly on New Year's Eve. Another great thing is that this is a magnificent place to see the sports victory parades, where they have the teams on duck boats. They go right by here. We're almost at eye level with the Red Sox or the Patriots or whoever they are. There's another great thing is that it's kind of hard logistically, but if you want to see the marathon, the Boston Marathon finish line, it's right out this window. The problem is that it's hard to get here because the entire Back Bay is chopped up, as you know, Tilly, with cyclone fence and security to get in and out of the area. And you can get here, but and it's jammed with people, but you're watching all the runners as they come, and they're given one of those space blankets, and they're given refreshments, and then they put a medal around their neck, and they have pallets full of bottled water. It's a nice thing to watch. So this is a key place to do these kind of things, to attend and to be here. It's an open house, and don't forget that we have an open house every Wednesday. We serve pupusas that Luis Guzman brings from Chelsea. This Wednesday they're made by our friend Marta Reyes. Fresh pupusas straight off the grill and brought here by Luis. Shall we say goodbye? Thank you all for joining us. Share this link. I look forward to seeing a copy of everything that's in the chat, because I'd like to see, for example, what Charlie said about Ross, the links to Ross Gelb's band. And other things that people have commented on. Thank you for joining us, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to Amar Ahmad, we have about 30,000 subscribers to our YouTube channel. We have some talks that have garnered nearly 1 million views on YouTube. This is a remarkable, just amazing, beautiful addition to our online life of the church. It's hard to fathom, but just great work from Amar Ahmad and from Crystal Rollins-Jackson, Luis Guzman, Thurman Judge. And on behalf of myself, Dean Stevens, I'm signing out and saying thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next Sunday. The speaker is, who is the speaker next Sunday? Amar, do you have here's the program. Sign up to get our paper program, or next Sunday, Chad Williams, Professor Chad Williams from Brandeis University, The Wounded World, W.E.B. Du Bois and the First World War. It is our W.E.B. Du Bois Address Week, when we celebrate Du Bois and his relationship with his church. He spoke numerous times over the years, including 1959, his last address before he moved to Ghana. And that address is recorded, the audio, on our YouTube channel. You can find it there. Next week, February 25th, Chad Williams. Join us, will you?
Thank you. Thank you.
You are very welcome, and thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you for.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, everybody.